day, learners. I am Mrs. O.A. Anyoleye of the Faculty of Law, Olabisi Omodombanjo University, Open and Distance Learning Center. I am your facilitator for business law, that's BIL 314. It is a 300 level course in the rain semester for accounting students, and it is a compulsory course. Generally, law permeates the modern society and it affects everyone's life. It regulates a person's life from the womb to the tomb, and this is what we mean by that. For instance, even a fetus in the womb has the right to live. The law regulates its life. As well as when a person dies, the law regulates his life while he's alive and also when he's dead. For instance, how will his will be executed? What happens to his property after he is gone? The society has developed complex body of rules to control activities of its members, and this also includes the business environment. This brings us to what we call business law. Business law encompasses the laws that apply to business. Every day of our life, we engage in business transactions. We take business decisions, and business law affects those decisions that we take as members of society for businesses. Law regulates all levels of government, at the local government, at the state government, at the federal level, and even at international level, while it also regulates individual and private lives. When we're talking about business law, it includes law of contract, intellectual property law, company law, law of agency, sale of goods, banking, insurance, taxation, and hire purchase. At the end of this course, you should be able to demonstrate an understanding of the purposes and functions of law in the society, and the law and the legal environment in which businesses thrive. You should also be able to apply the basic knowledge to business transactions, and then you should be able to demonstrate a range of skills, and this include research abilities, problem solving and analytical and skills, and then also ethical values. Now we want to talk, you are welcome to study session 1, Introduction to Law. Now you may want to ask, what is law? Law is a definite rule. There are no acceptable definitions of law, no universally acceptable definition of law. Many legal scholars have tried to answer the question, what is law? Law may be defined as a rule, definite rule of behavior, which is backed by sovereign power of the state. It is a system of rules created and enforced through social or governmental institutions to regulate behavior in the society. Law is a body of rules recognized and maintained by the state to regulate human behavior and conduct in society. This takes us to the characteristics of law. The characteristics of law is a set of rules. It regulates human conduct. That means that it regulates how human beings behave in the society, how human beings relate amongst each other in the society. Then it is created and maintained by the state. That means it is the government that creates the law, and it is the government that maintains the law. That's why we have law enforcement agencies. That's why we have law enforcement agencies. It creates some certain amount of stability, fixity, and uniformity. For instance, the law that applies to a rich person also applies to the poor. It applies to the old, it applies to the young. And that's why we say we have the rule of law, and everybody is equal under the rule of law. Then it is backed by coercive authority. That means that anybody that goes against the law will be sanctioned because the law is backed by the state. A violation of the law leads to sanctions. Then it is an expression of the will of the people, and it is generally written down to give it definitiveness. Now, when we say it is an expression of the will of the people, you all know the legislature, the House of Assembly, the State House of Assembly, the Federal House of Representatives, and the Senate. The people gave them the mandate to make the laws. They are the ones that make the laws for the society, but their power to make the laws was given to them by the people who voted them into power. So it is the will of the people that is expressed as law. and it also relates to the concept of sovereignty. That means that the state has power over everybody, irrespective of their position, whether the low or the high. Now we want to talk about the purposes and functions of law. There are some functions that law serves several purposes. We have the macro functions and the micro functions. The macro functions are the law covers public order, political order, social order, economic order. They also include resolution of social problems and regulation of human relationships. The micro functions of law includes defining the limits of acceptable behavior and the consequences of certain forms of behavior. Now, from this we can extract 4 principal purposes and functions of law, and these are establishing standards, maintaining order, resolving disputes, and protecting liberties. Establishing standards. When you're talking about establishing standards, law is a guidepost for minimally acceptable behavior in the society. For instance, some behavior will constitute a crime in the society, and it is the law that will determine what behavior constitutes a crime or what behavior constitutes a tort. So a crime is a state. What constitutes law? For instance, it is a crime to cause physical injury to another person. You cannot just slap somebody and expect to go scot-free. Such a thing will constitute a crime of assault. It also constitutes a tort of assault. It is a civil offense as well as a criminal. It's a criminal offense as well as a civil wrong against the person to whom it has been committed. For the crime, it is against the state. For the tort, it's against the person. Then the second function of law is maintaining order. This is linked to the first function, that is establishing standards. There is need for order in the society. So law regulates how people behave and react, and then provides order when people follow the standards and guidelines that has been provided by law. Then resolving disputes. Disputes are generally a part of human nature. We do not all come from the same background. We do not all come from the same household. Even children of the same parents have disputes, much less people who are from different backgrounds. So when disputes happen, law is used to adjudicate, to settle the disputes between the parties. It could be by going to court or by what we call alternative dispute resolution, which means that it's less formal. You do not have to go to court, but you have some form of what we call arbitration, mediation, or med-app. Those are alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. Then we have the last one is protecting liberties and rights. As human beings, everybody is entitled to some liberty and rights, those that are basic as human beings. Some of them are called fundamental human rights, and nobody has a right to violate or to derogate or to derogate from those rights. Now, under the Constitution, we have what we call the fundamental human rights in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. These are the right to life, the right to the dignity of human person, the right to fair hearing, family and private life, freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of expression, and peaceful assembly. These rights are fundamental to every human person, and it is not dependent on whether the person is a male or a female, is fair or is short or is dark or is rich or is poor. Everybody, by virtue of being human, is entitled to these fundamental human rights. So the law helps to protect the fundamental rights of a person. The right to life cannot be taken by anybody except through the functions of law. For instance, somebody who has killed another person, once the law decides that he is guilty, then his life will also be taken. But without that, every person's life is inviolable and cannot be taken by another person. Now, classification of laws. We come to classification of laws. Like I told you earlier, I said that law is to maintain standards and to establish standards. We have some different classifications of laws. We have the law can be defined into classified into criminal law, private law, public law, municipal law, international law. When you're talking about, we have substantive law and procedural law. And what do we mean by that? The substantive law creates and controls the rights and duties. For example, law of tort and law of contract. What does when you want to enter into a contract, what are those things that make a contract valid? And those are some of the things that we mean by substantive law. Then the procedural law shows how the substantive law will be applied. For instance, the rules of evidence. After somebody's right has been infringed and he has taken out a matter in court, how is his right going to be enforced? That is what we mean by the procedural law. Then we have civil law and criminal law. When you are talking about civil law and criminal law, civil law is the law as it relates to private rights and duties. As with the substantial law, it relates to private rights and duties. A specific example is that all contract for the sale of real property must be in writing. That's a civil law. Why is it civil law? Because it deals with the duties between private persons, two or more individuals, and the violation of a contract will not be a wrong between against the whole society, but to be a wrong between two people. The violation of a private right is a wrong between two people, and the person whose right has been violated will be entitled to remedies against the person that has violated his rights. But when we're talking about criminal law, it is a wrong against the society. For instance, because if it's a wrong against society for which the society will take sanctions against the wrongdoer. For instance, stealing, it is a crime. If it is not checked, it will cause chaos and law and order. Fighting in the society is a crime. Murder is a crime, because the law has said that everybody's life is inviolable and you cannot take the life of anybody without reason. So criminal law is a crime against the society. It is a wrong against the society, a wrong against the whole community, and it is the community that grants sanctions against such. Then we have private or public law. Private law, like we stated when we're talking about civil and criminal, private law is a law that relates to a person. Like, I want to buy property, it's my person, it's private to me. It doesn't have anything to do with the public. But public law is a law that deals with the society. We have, for example, environmental law. We do not want people to spoil the society, spoil the environment, because we are all members of the society that will enjoy the environment. So the exploitation, for instance, corruption in the society, the exploitation of people in the society, vulnerable members of the society. Examples of criminal law. We have law against assault, burglary, robbery, and murder. Then we have municipal law and international law. Municipal law and international law. Municipal law can be said to be local law. That is the law of the land, the law of the state, the law of Nigeria, for instance, as against international law. International law is the law of several law that goes beyond the territories of a state. It is between states. It governs the relationship between the states. When we are talking about states here, it means countries. We are not using state as in Ogun State or Oyo State. When you say state, it means countries. So international law governs the relationship between countries amongst themselves. We have laws that cover international organizations like United Nations, the WTO, that's a World Trade Organization, and all. It regulates the relationship between states. For instance, another country cannot come and invade Nigeria. So we have an example of international law is the Universal Declaration. An example of international law is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We also have the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. These are laws that are made by the international bodies like the UN, the African Union, and to regulate the UN and African Union. Then we have written and unwritten law. Some laws are written, like for instance, the Nigerian Constitution is a written law, while the Constitution of UK is not written. Though a law will not be regarded as written just because it's written in a document, but a law is written because it has been validly enacted by the legislature of the country. It has been passed to law in the prescribed manner. For instance, we have in Nigeria, the law must be passed by the National Assembly, and then it must be duly assented to by the president before it becomes law. There are some laws, for instance, in Nigeria, there are some laws that the National Assembly, they passed the bill, it has gone from the House of Representatives to the National Assembly, but until it is assented to by the president, it does not become law in Nigeria. It is the date of assent that makes it become law in Nigeria. Now we come to the third aspect of law, which is the fundamental human rights. Like I told you earlier, I said that under Chapter 4 of the Constitution of Nigeria 1999, we have the fundamental human rights. They are the rights to which everybody is entitled by virtue of the fact that that person is a human being, irrespective of his race, his nationality, his political opinion, his color, his sex, or his religion, or his ethnic group. The enjoyment of this right is subject to, however, the fact that you have a right does not mean that you can infringe the right of another person. So everybody is entitled to his own right, but subject to respecting the rights of others. And the fundamental rights are basic rights of every human being. It belongs to every human being in the whole world. Even the government cannot derogate from this right without more. The government cannot derogate from this right. And we have from section 33 of the Constitution up to 41, the rights are up to 43. The rights are stated there. We have the right to life, the right to the dignity of human person, the right to personal liberty, the right to fair hearing, right to private and family life, right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, right to freedom of expression and press, right to peaceful assembly and association, right to freedom of movement, right to freedom from discrimination, right to acquire and own immovable property anywhere in Nigeria. Now, right to life, it can, as I said earlier, the right to life is inviolable, and nobody can deprive another person of the right to life, except in where a court order is being carried out. If somebody has committed a crime, murder or armed robbery, for instance, and the person has been found guilty, then his right to life might be curtailed by a court order. Then the right to the dignity of human person. No person shall be subjected to forced labor. Everybody has a right to work for anybody. Nobody should be subjected to forced labor, except, of course, the carrying out of a sentence. For instance, somebody who has been imprisoned and is been sentenced to work with hard labor, then he has the right to work. But aside from that, everybody is free from slavery and from dignity to the dignity of human person. The right to personal liberty, tied to the other one. You have a right to your liberty. Nobody can enslave another person. Right to fair hearing. A person has a right to fair hearing. We have what we call the audi alteram partem rule. That means that hear the other party. In the resolution of a dispute, both parties must be heard. You cannot hear one party and say the other, and then come to the court cannot hear one party and come to the judgment. Both parties must come forward with their evidence, and then the court will now decide on both evidence. So it means that everybody is entitled to fair hearing. And if a person's fair hearing has been derogated from, whatever has been done under that will be a nullity. Then right to private and family life. You have a right to have a family, the right to live your life in a private way, and then the government cannot, they don't have a right to tap your phone and all those things. You have a right to family life. The right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Nobody can force a religion on anybody. We have a right to your religion. I have a right to my religion. That's why we go to mosque, churches, and then we even have free thinkers. You cannot be, and because of that, you cannot. Nobody can say because you will not get because you do not belong to the same religion, then you are not entitled to the fundamental rights. So everybody is entitled to his religion. Then freedom of expression and the press. It means that you have a right to freedom of expression. You can express yourself. But what if you're in the right to freedom of expression? You should not slander another person, say something that is untrue about somebody else. That is slander, because that means you are infringing the rights of another person, and you might be liable in damages to that person. Then right to peaceful assembly. Everybody has a right to peaceful assembly, for as long as you do not go beyond the bounds of the law. And that was why right to peace. Then right to freedom of movement. You have a right to move from any part of the world, Nigeria, to another without let or hindrance, except in cases where the government says no, you cannot move, like when they place a curfew. Then right to acquire and own immovable property anywhere in the world, anywhere in Nigeria. Right to acquire and own immovable property anywhere in Nigeria. So whether you are from Lagos, you are from Kano, you are from Abuja, you can own an property, you can buy land anywhere in Nigeria. And section 44 goes on to say that your property cannot be acquired compulsorily without due compensation from the government. So the government cannot say that yes, we want to use the land. Yes, they have a right to use the land because for common good of the people, but when they want to use the land, they must pay you adequate compensation. With that, we come to the end of study session 1. Thank you for listening.